Good evening. A cross-country shortage of certain cold medications isn't making things any easier for those fighting the flu. And with health officials calling this season a bad one, the timing couldn't be worse.
There's no doubt about it. Flu season is in full swing. With all the sneezing, wheezing, and coughing, the World Health Organization says flu activity is up sharply compared to last year.
More outbreaks in long-term care facilities and hospitals and so forth. So, and certainly more doctor visits or consultations for influenza-like illness. So we are seeing more severe illness.
And smack dab in the middle of that rise is a shortage of popular cold medications across the country. Products like Buckley's and Neocitrin. It's all because of upgrades to the Novartis plant in Nebraska, the manufacturer behind the brands. Some pharmacies have been sold out for months, while others are in short supply, including this Lloydminster pharmacy.
We definitely have been having quite a few people coming in since it is the cold season. So people have been coming in and, we've been trying to help them figure out what signs and symptoms they have and then kind of trying to find other products that may be working for them.
With just 2 boxes of Neocitrin and only a handful of Buckley's products left on the shelves, Okuka says it's all about education and knowing exactly what's in the drugs.
So for example, if you have a runny nose, you may not necessarily, and that's your only symptom, you may not necessarily need, the Buckley's Complete. You can take Claritin or Reactin, which is an antihistamine, and that's going to help with that runny nose.
But for those looking to beat the bug without medication, Okuka advises plenty of liquids like tea and soup, and of course, lots of rest.
Agriculture had its fair share of headlines in 2012, from the end of the Canadian Wheat Board monopoly to the largest beef recall in our country's history. Naranisa sat down with Canada's Agriculture Minister to discuss the past year.
So we are sitting here with Gerry Ritz, the MP for Battleford Lloydminster, as well as the Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We're going to start off with the very historic day for farmers and producers in Western Canada. We're talking about the elimination of them having to sign up for the Canadian Wheat Board, no longer the handler of their barley and their wheat and all that stuff. So just kind of give me a little bit of a background of how it's been so far the last few months since this has come into play.
Well, it was many decades coming for a lot of folks. Put a lot of energy into moving away from the single desk, the mandatory side of the Canadian Wheat Board. Canadian Wheat Board's still there, but it's an optional entity now for farmers across Western Canada. They have the same rights and privileges as their cousins in Ontario have enjoyed for quite some time. Having said that, it's worked well. We've had a fall where we've sold more product than we've seen move out by this time of year any other time. We've had good logistics with the railways stepping up. As it used to be when a farmer dumped their grain in the pit of the elevator, it was still theirs until it got to port, until it was loaded on the ship. That's no longer the case. Now when they drop it in the elevator pit, there's no more storage, no more demurrage. So now the commercial side of shippers and the railways and so on has come into play, and we've seen a lot more product get where it's supposed to go without the logistics nightmares that we've faced.
Do you have numbers of how many farmers have gone this route or they are not signing up with the CWB? Do you have any numbers on that?
The vast majority have not signed anything with the CWB. They're still there. They're still an entity. They offer both a cash price and a pool price. They have garnered some, I would guesstimate some 15 to 20% of what they used to do in the first blush as farmers decided what to do. There's a lot of farmers that have held back waiting to see what's going to happen in the new year. What's pricing going to do? It's been helped by droughts in other parts of the world. The American crop was off some 17% to what it normally is. The Australians had some problems. China had some problems. We've seen some things in Europe and so on too, where there isn't the volume that everyone was anticipating. At the end of the day, Canadian product didn't have the volume either, but the value was still there because of the quality of the grains.
What was the reaction for farmers when this did come into play in August?
Well, the majority of farmers embraced it, wanted to move ahead. There was a certain percentage that weren't sure how it was going to work out, if it was going to benefit them or not, but were willing to accept the change. At the end of the day, there's still maybe 5 or 10% that don't want to see this happen, continue to press the courts to make rulings that have not borne fruit at this point. But the vast majority of farmers have embraced marketing their wheat and durum and barley the same as they embrace selling their canolas and their special crops. So it's been a win-win all the way across.
Okay, we're gonna move on now to the beef recall. One of the biggest story of the year when it comes to agriculture probably would have been the biggest history or recall of meat in Canadian history over at XL Foods with the E. coli scare. So what is the government doing to ensure that safety inspection when it comes to food products is done correctly, done right, so we don't see something like this again?
Well, one of the steps, of course, is inspection at the plant, and that's a joint job description between the owners of the plant, the workers in the plant, and CFIA, who are there as the regulator. Everybody plays a role in that to make sure that what comes across to your table is safe. The vast majority of foodborne illnesses in this country happen right on this table or kitchen tables, restaurant tables, counters, and so on across the country. But at the end of the day, no one should ever apologize for doing their job. No one should ever apologize for the due diligence and the size and scope of the recall that was required to make sure everything was contained. This is a large plant. You know, they process some 2.5 million pounds of beef a day. So when you start doing 5 days worth of recall, you're looking for 12 million pounds of product. So it does get large very, very quickly. So you know, the recall was very successful. Unfortunately, 18 people did fall ill, but no deaths attributed to it, which is always a bonus. No one wants to see anyone be sick. Least of all the professional folks of CFIA on the front lines out there. At the end of the day, we'll make some changes to some of the procedures and protocols, but this is business as usual with the quantity and you know, the workload that's out there for everyone involved in the industry. I wish I could say to everybody out there it'll never happen again, but there are too many variables, too many moving parts to guarantee that it can never happen again. We work with our partners in public health, both provincially and federally, to make sure that the food that Canadians have available to them is safe.
Well, because you were saying there was going to be some changes made. Can you kind of touch on what some of those changes are? Well,
we passed a piece of legislation. It was actually tabled long before this happened, last spring, Bill S11. And what that does is give CFIA more recall powers, faster recall powers, and make sure that the plant of record, whether it's an XL or someone else, keeps a quality and consistency of supply in the record keeping that they do. So it doesn't take days, and you know, days that are very much required in tracing this out. It doesn't take days to put the puzzles together. You can actually see it there on a spreadsheet.
Is it safe to say that there's not enough inspectors, food inspectors, that there is a shortage?
There are 46 professional people, inspection staff on site in that plant. That's what's required too. There are international formulas and protocols that we follow because this is an international shipper. So there are enough people on the job doing it. Can we enhance some of what they do? Can they take a different look at certain things? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I don't think the number of inspectors was ever a concern.
Well, thank you so much for sitting and talking with us. This is Gerry Ritz, the MP for Lloydminster Battlefords, as well as the Minister of Agriculture. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.